We discussed in the past several days the idea of diverse customs. People who have a different background, different community background, people who live in different cities, who either travel or, in the cases we discussed yesterday, a merger of different congregations. How should we handle those? An example of discussion today is Yom Tov Sheni Shel Galuyot. If you look at the year around, take for example Pesach. In Israel they're celebrating one day, outside of Israel 2 days. A traveler, how exactly we hold him as a traveler? Sometimes he needs to have some level of observance if he's traveled from Israel outside, and vice versa. When we hold that person as a part of the community, a permanent resident, and when we hold him only as a traveler. We derive from that also Hilchot Shvi'it we have in the Torah, in the book of Leviticus, which we discuss later, a law of the sabbatical year, and there is a lot of derivation from that law, which is the 7 year we have to get rid of the produce, we have to be ownerless for the property, and therefore there are some different traditions when it's come to that, different understanding. So we're going to deal with that as well. So if you wrap it up, is we're going to come to some conclusions. As you know, when involved with the Talmud, we have many times a discussion that exceeded more than just 1 or 2 dapim, pages. But today we're going to go also to the phases of the conclusions, when we go by the communal observance, and when a person can observe, at least in his private place, his original minhagim. Nun Aleph Amud Bet, שתי שורות מלמטה, 51b, 2 lines from the bottom of the page. אמר לרב ספרא לרבי אבא, כגון דענן דידעינן בקביעה דירחה, ביישוב לא עבדינה, מפני שינוי המחלוקת. Here we speak about situations that the shluchei bedin, the people who was emissary for the rabbinical court, traveled to different cities in those days to inform the inhabitants when exactly the day is Rosh Chodesh. However, there are some circumstances that people receive their notice late, or if it's a community that observe because of the decree of the rabbis. So Tosfot in Sukkah 53 tells us that basically this applies to the situation that you enter to a domain, to a city, to a place that it's not clear when it's a Rosh Chodesh, and therefore they're observing a 2 days of festival. Again, we're going back in that sense at that time that they do not have the modern technology, so basically they go in that sense, since we don't want to create a deviation with the community, so therefore you go by the community tradition, community minhag. Bamidbar, anything that exceeded more than 2,000 cubit, it's considering a midbar, a place that it's out in the wilderness. So the question is, how should we observe? So the Mishnah Berurah, the code, tells us in Taf Samechet 468 that it's an issue to do any type of work, even not in the presence of people in that location. However, if it's in the way, it's in the private, then they can observe it. But the key issue here, if a person intends to return, let's trace a situation. You have an Israeli that come and visit us here in the United States, and the person's planning to stay here for some time, but in his or her intent is to do what? To return to Israel. So now is the second day of Pesach. So far what we understand, אמר לרבי אבא said to Rav Safra, הכי אמר רב עמי ביישוב אסור במדבר מותר. So the idea is, if a person know his intent to return to Eretz Israel, so in this discussion, which is the Talmudic time, said that when it's come to the second day of the festival, if it's a place that people observe 2 days, even he intend to return to his place, he shouldn't do it. He shouldn't do any type of work. But if it's out in the wilderness, out in a place, so that's different. Then he can do it. I'm not going there to a practical halachot, but to just give you the idea. Befarhesia in public, even in our days, the rabbis instructed us not to do work, meaning people who come from Eretz Israel. In private is different story. So we are in the 52, the top of the page. So here we give an example of the rabbi's attitude for someone who's not followed that decree. Remember, we said many times, morning, we said many times that if the rabbis put the boundaries, let's talk in the contemporary language. Imagine if the local sheriff make rules for that place. Good morning. If the local police officer make a rule for his location, so if someone violates the rule, even it's not applied to the entire state or the entire country, but it's just for that location, he gets punishment. Even it may go by the state law, it's not the issue, but the sheriff or the head of the police have the right in certain circumstances to enforce certain rules that he made up. So in that sense, no comparison, just to grasp the idea. If you have rabbis that put a decree, we observe it in that seriousness the same as a general decree. So here is a situation that someone during the second day of festival, he basically behave in a manner that is a regular secular day. רב נתן בר אסיה אזל מבעיריו לפומפדיטה ביום שני של עצרת. Pumpedita is a very big city of a study of scholarship in Babylon, and the yeshiva, the place of study, was outside of the city of Pumpedita. So we discussed in the past, if you remember the tractate Shabbat and Eruvin, we discussed the idea of the measurement of Shabbat, which means a person should not go out exceeding more than 2,000 cubits from the place that he dwelled when Shabbat began. Remember, we discussed it at the 4th chapter of Eruvin. Even it's in a way inside the measurement of the city, but still it should not exceed the 2,000 cubits. So now here it happens that someone took a chance, and we said in the Mishnah that the person should not deviate from the tradition of the community. And what did he do? He went and he exceeded the 2,000 cubit measurement that the rabbis made. Shamtei Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef, what did he do to him? He put him under nidui, excommunication. Why? Because, as you know, in every group of people you have a team player. You have a group of people that follow certain rules, and he didn't do it. Okay? Amar le'abayei velenagde mar nagde. He deserved malkot, which means there is a certain restrictions and punishment you do as a communal for people who does not follow the rules of the community leaders. So in that sense, they say that he deserved malkot. So Amar Lei, Rabbi Yosef said to him, Adifa avdelei, midmarava minnu angila devei rav, velo miminnu ashramta. Which means, you have a different level of punishment. He says, in the West, which is in Eretz Israel, they hold a different category. The highest category that you punish a person, it's if you excommunicate with him. When you basically excommunicate with him, the way that they understand, which is a very deep psychological effect on a person, is more than the physical. So Ika de Amrei is another option, Nagdei Rav Yosef, that yes, he went the other way and he gave him malkot. Amar le Abaye, Nesham Temar, we should put him under the cherem. Cherem is like excommunication. The Rav Shmuel de Amrei Travayu, that both Rav and Shmuel said, Minadin al shnei yamim tovim shel galuyot, which means if a person not observe the second day, we should put a ban, because again that is a strong rabbinic decree. Amar le hanimile inish de alma, hacha tzova de rabbananu de tava le avdei. He says, look, you can't give a punishment for a Torah scholar the same as a regular person in a sense of violation of rabbinic decree. He says, if it's a regular person, it's one thing, but here we are dealing with a Torah scholar, so therefore I was lenient with him. Because if you go by the rule of Eretz Israel, they go by the leniency, which is malkot, but not excommunication. Why? Because we don't want people to belittle the honor of the Torah.
So, Rabbi, a scholar will receive a more bigger punishment?
Only good point. Depending on the case. Remember you asked me? The idea is, in this situation, since it was a rabbinic decree on the community, and some rabbis say that he has his own reasons, etc., they treat him differently.
Oh, okay.
In general, you treat all the same, but there are certain situations that you treated the persons in a different way for different reasons. It's all in a sense, a circumstantial evidence. But the Torah scholar, we don't want here for people to belittle the value, the honor of the Torah.
Yeah, but since it's not a biblical transgression that he did, it was a rabbinical.
Right.
Then it should be more lenient with him in that sense, because
so they're lenient. They get to the malkot. Malkot it's very lenient. Excommunication, what we hold in our understanding, it's much stronger than malkot. Excommunication totally put him outside of the community. You don't communicate with that person. That's much higher.
So that sounds like a more harsh punishment.
So that's the reason why
psychologically,
they didn't do it.
because.
But what they do to him is just give him malkot. They didn't excommunicate him.
Oh, okay.
Now we go to the second part of the Mishnah, and we said in the Mishnah, in page 50b, I just repeat the last part of the Mishnah. The Mishnah said, "Kayotze bo amolich perot shvi'it." Same apply for someone, excuse me, who carries the fruits from the 7 years. Mimakom shekalu lemakom shelo kalu. The Torah said, "V'haita shavat haaretz lachem leochla." So let's go first and see what the Torah said, so we get the full picture. I'm sharing with you Parashat Behar, book of Vayikra, book of Leviticus, chapter 25. Translation. Vayidaber Hashem spoke to Moses on Mount Sinai, saying, "Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, when you come into the land that I give you, the land shall observe a Shabbat rest for Hashem. For 6 years you may sow your field, and for 6 years you may prune your vineyard, and you may gather in its crop. But on the 7th year a complete rest there shall be for the land, a Shabbat for Hashem. You field shall not sow, and you vineyard you shall not prune. The aftergrowth of your harvest you shall not reap, and the grapes of you keeping away you shall not pick. It shall be a year of rest for the land. The resting of the land shall be yours to eat for you, and for your servants, and for your maidservant, and for your hired worker, and for your one who resides with you. Now listen carefully. And for your animal, and for your beast that is in your land, shall all its carb be to eat. So, what we understand, we have a concept here that it's called Peirot Shvi'it, and the way that we understand the Torah, with certain limitations, we allow to give it to a people and to animals. Now, what we understand in the last line that as long as the animal eating from that field. Let's see first what Rashi said. Rashi said there, and for your animal and for your beast, if a beast, which means an undomesticated, ownerless animal, may eat the fruit of the 7th year. It is not true that almost so a domesticated animal may eat, for its food is upon you, which means feeding it. It's your responsibility. So what do you mean by saying for your domesticated animal? We compare the two. For a while is the wild beast eats in the field, which means all the while that is particular type of produce is freely available to the wild beast. Feed your animal from your house, which means you may store a supply of that type of produce for your domesticated animal. If, listen carefully, if it has been finished for the wild beast for its field, if it is no longer found in the field, get rid of it for your animal from your house, which means take out what you have stored for your animal and make it available to all. The Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimonides, tells us in the Mishneh Torah, in the is a famous book, Mishneh Torah, Hilchot Seder Zvaim, Hilchot Shmita veYovel, and he tells us first on chapter 4, Kavdalet 24. Mitzvat aseh, it's a biblical commandment, lehashmit kol ma shetotzi haaretz bashvit, to basically all the produce that came out of the sabbatical year you should declare ownerless. Shene'emar, it's written, ve'ashvi'it tishmetena untashtam, we just said that the 7 years should. So therefore, if he collects all the produce inside his house, he should declare ownerless, and therefore people can use it. So what we understand so far from this Rambam, we understand from the Rambam that as long as the animal using, so you can give it, but when he is no longer available, we have to get rid of that even from the person it's ours. There is a disputation among the rabbi how and which way you have to get rid of that. There are those who say that you totally have to get rid of those produce from that point that is forbidden to eat. There are others said it's only to declare ownerless, but then after you declare ownerless, you can return them as like everyone else. You find something in the street, you can pick it up and use it. So it means that it's a reprocessing what's belong. So back to what we discuss here. The Gemarrah said, if you go from a place that is no longer available to a place that there are still, you have some produce of the sabbatical year, you have to get rid of them. And Rabbi Yehuda said, he said in the Mishnah, soon we explain what does that mean. In general, Rabbi Yehuda meant that it's applied to a person who carries the produce of the sabbatical year from a place that they are still available to a place that it's not available. Remember, our topic here is the diverse customs. So you have a city that they have leftover produce from the sabbatical year, and this traveler, let's call him Mr. Reuben, he traveled from the city that they still have produce from the sabbatical year to a city that they don't. So the first opinion said that he have to get rid of what he had, right? Rabbi Yehuda said no, he doesn't need to get rid of that. Why? Because he can say to the people in that location, you can eat from that fruit that I brought from my place. Why? Because he can explain to them that their produce need to get rid of, right? Because they grow there, but his produce they don't. Why? Because they grow in a different location. That still there is some produce available in the field. So it will not create any friction, any diverse custom between the different locations. So the Gemara asks, ולית לרבי יהודה דתנן, נותנים עליו חומרי המקום שיצא משם וחומרי המקום שהלך לשם. What we say, that we impose upon the person a stringencies from the place that he came in, place that he goes to. In both ways we go stringent. So it's a very puzzling Rashi here. Related to Rabbi Yehuda, Rashi said that it's not a disputation and it's not dependent upon the different diverse custom, but the Sfat Emet challenged this Rashi greatly. He says, how do you compare the two? There is a concept, al titosh Torah timera, should not forsake your mother's teaching, and we explained yesterday and day before yesterday, if you have some minhagim, some tradition from your body, you should observe it. In other words, they have their own reasoning why they do it. So he left with the question, but anyway, you cannot say that if someone carry a fruit from the sabbatical year from a place that they are still available to a place that they are not, because it's not create any controversy. It is a issue, because if a person comes there as a visitor, we don't want to create some type of the Pnei Yoshua said denigration or belittling the minhag hamakom, the tradition of that place. It sounds like rude, obnoxious. You come to a different location, you should behave in a manner that will not be an insult to the people the way they behave. So they go in different direction, and they said, Amar Rav Shesha Bred Rabidi Milta Achrid Kamar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda meant something else. Ve'achi Kamar. או ממקום שלא כלו למקום שלא כלו, ושמע שכלו במקומו חייב לבאר. He carries those produce of the sabbatical year from a place that they are still available to a place that they are not. But then he heard that in his original destination they're already gone. So then he is obligated to get rid of to expunge them at that time. Rabbi Yehuda, Omer Rabbi Yehuda have his opinion. He said he can say to them, צא והבא לך אף אתה מאיך דהייתינו והלא כללו. He can say, come and pick up some of the fruit that I brought, and they are still available in the place that he went to. So it means that he is not diverse the tradition, the minagim, from a place that he is dwell, because they still have some produce available. So the Gemarrah challenged that and he said, "Lemeimra de Rabbi Yehuda lekula kama, v'amar Rabbi Elazar lo amar Rabbi Yehuda lechumra." We originally understand that Rabbi Yehuda's opinion is to forbid something that Tanakama allow, that the first one allow, and he turns around the opposite. Ela epuch, eino chayav levaer. You have to say that it doesn't need to get rid of the produce. Why? Because not consider a stringency of the place he came from. Rabbi Yehuda omer, tzeva velecha afata me'echad ha'itinu ve'akalu lehu. So he brought those produce from the place that I brought to you, and it means that it's already gone. So what we understand so far? We understand that Rabbi Yehuda hold more stringencies. Abaye came in and he said, no, you should understand as follows. Abaye amar olam kedektani, the way that we understand originally. Ve'achi ke'amar, that's the way we should understand. O mimakom shelo kalu lemakom shekalu. If he came from a place that they are still available, those produce, and he entered to the city that they're not available, ve'chziran limkomam, and he returned those produce to the original place that it came from, ve'adain lo kalu, and there are still some fruits there available, eino chayav levayer, he doesn't have the obligation to expand them. Why? Because in that sense, the fruit hold that they are like attached to the original place they came from. Rabbi Yehuda disagreed, and he said, try to bring more fruits, more produce from this type of species, from a place that you brought now, so since those produce is no longer available there, so therefore he should bring those produce from a place that is not available to a place that it is from the place that is not available to a place that is available, and therefore you have to get rid of them. Matkif la Ravashi. What we understand, we go stringent. Atu agaba de chamara kaltin, which means this is like using a euphemism, using a metaphor. He says the back of the donkey that carry those produce, in those days they don't have cars, right? So the donkey that carried those produce to the second place, it means that his back also needs to observe all the stringencies, which means he's using a metaphor. He tried to say that the fact that they have a produce in that place, it basically needs to observe now the law of sabbatical year that apply to that place, even you not go by the place that they are born, that they came from. But since those produce did not created in the place that he is now there, and he is not eating them, so why you impose upon those produce the stringency of that place? Again, let's understand, to make sure that let's say you have city A and city B. In city A, what happened? This fellow Reuven, he pick up all those produce from city A, and in that place, in city A, they no longer have those produce. He left with his donkey and the produce from city A. Now he entered to a city B. Now they have stringency in the city B, but the fruits, the produce came from city A. So he asked, why you impose upon him the stringency of the city B, since the produce was originally made in city A? What are you saying? That's the minhag, that's the tradition of the city B. But those produce came from different location, right? Ravashi explained, the plugta de anetanai, it's depend upon a different disputation. What is the disputation? Ditnan, we have a Mishnah, Tractate Shvi'it, chapter 9, Mishnah 5. Hakovesh shlosha kvashim bechavit. So, if a person having one chavit achat, you have a one barrel, one big jar, and he has three different type of vegetable, and he put them all together in one big jar. So what happened? Imagine if you have a salty water, and that's the basic in that big jar that is based on the vinegar or salty water, and you want to observe certain, let's say, pickles. You take a cucumbers, that now it's a pickles, and you take let's say tomato, and you take let's say it's another produce. There are three different produce. You combine them with the salty water or vinegar. What happened? There are three different tastes, three different things. But you combine it with the salty water. Now, it turns that one of the three produce is the sabbatical year that you have to get rid of. But it combines in three different produce in one jar. Rabbi Eliezer said, "Ochlin al harishon." So Rabbi Eliezer said, what? You have to eat all the three vegetables based on the status of the first, which means what? Also, the other one is nivla, it's part of the original one. So therefore, as if you have just one of them, so you consider it as one. Why? Because by doing so, by combining the three, by preserving in the barrel the three different type, what happened? It's one swallow, the Tosfot said, with the other two. So it means that if one of the three needs to expand, it doesn't impose upon the other two. Okay? Even the taste, it combined by all three. Rabbi Yoshua Omer, af al ha'acharon. So it means, since it's a mixture, so what do? One may even continue eating all of them. Why? Because it's based on a status of the final type of those vegetables until it's no longer present in the field. So again, in that sense, you don't go by the taste of that produce, you look how far you go with the situation, if is more produce available. Rabbi Yoshua אומר, כל שכלה מינו משדה עבר מינו מן החבית. והלכה כדבריו. Rabbi Gamliel said, no. Here is the idea. He said, if is no longer available in the field, boom. What do you have to do? You have to get rid of that, you have to remove its type from the barrel, and it's applied to all of them. It's like almost like you call it in the medicine world, it's contagious. It's carried to the others. And the halacha and the rule is according to Rabban Gamliel. So, Ravina Amar. Ravina, go back to the disputation we mentioned in the Mishnah, and he said, Beflukta de'are tanai de Tanya. That's depend upon a different disputation. What they said, that ochlin de Tanya, ochlin batmarim ad sheyichle acharon shebetzoar. You have a date. So there's a city called Zoar. If you remember in the Bible, the story of beginning of Genesis and Lot, you have there a city of dates. It's called Zoar. So he said, you can eat all the dates in Judah, in Yehuda, it's the land, until the last palm tree, which produce in Zoar, is seeds. So what do we understand? We understand from that's applied to the land of Yehuda, Judah, And that's applied to the place at the land they have this city, and the only time you have to get rid of all the produce is from the city of the date is no longer available. רבן שמעון בן גמליאל אומר 52b אוכלין על של בית הקיפין ואין אוכלין על שבין השיצין. Think about it. You have the animals and they're eating produce. They can reach a certain point. If they raise their head, they can go and eat high, but there is limitations. There are certain fruits that are at the top of those trees that the animals cannot reach. Okay? It reminded me, yesterday it was in the capital about the business of the goats. Did you read that? It's a very interesting innovation. It's a guy live out in Bui, and he has absolutely amazing idea. I was very impressed. It was a front page. So the guy basically raised goats, and now they hire him, different authority hire him. He goes to those large cemeteries in DC and all the other places, and the goats are eating all they don't touch a grass, but they eat all the other thing, and they clean up places. In other words, instead of using materials to clean, you use the goat to get rid of all the thing you don't need. So he go with his truck, bring all these goats, put the fences around. For a couple of hours they eat everything they wish to, and you walk out, it's all neat and clean. So anyway, back to our subject, you have those animals that reach a certain point. So how you treat it? So according to Tanakama, the animal cannot reach it. So if this animal cannot reach it, it's not considering accessible to the animals. Rabbi Yehuda said, so you treat it further, you treat it in a sense that if the animal cannot reach, it means that the animal doesn't have it as an available. It's not available for the animal. So since we talk about all the mitzvah of bi'ur, of getting rid of the produce of sabbatical year, Nanatam, we learned in that Mishnah in Tractate Shvi'it, chapter 9, Shalosh aratzot labi'ur. There are 3 different types of bi'ur. So let's go a little bit to the Rambam. I want to share with you what the Rambam said in the bi'ur, because then we understand the concept of Shalosh aratzot labi'ur. Again, Rambam, סדר זרעים, הלכות שמיטה ויובל, פרק שביעי, הלכות א' ג'. פירות שביעית, 7th chapter of the Rambam. I'm just translating from the text. The produce of the sabbatical year. You don't eat from them as long as that part, as that species, as that available in the field. Because the Torah said, for your animals, domesticated animal, non-domesticated that you have in your land, all this available. So if he has many produce, he should spread it to a food for the 3 meals to each of them, and you cannot eat it afterward regardless if the person is poor or wealthy. But if he cannot find a use for those produce at that time, he has to burn it in fire or throw it to the Dead Sea and get rid of them, get rid of them. So what we understand from this Rambam, that there are basically 2 different avenues when it's come to the produce of the sabbatical year. There is an idea, the Rambam said that we have to expunge them, we have to get rid of them, get rid of them, and after that time you cannot use those produce at all. The Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman on the Torah, Nachmanides, and also Tosfot here, said no. What do you have to do? And that's very practical. You have to take the sabbatical year produce, you put it outside, you declare ownerless for that produce, and then after that you can go ahead and use them, which means the moment that it's declared ownerless, then it can be used. So now here is the question the Gemarrah asked. Nanatam, we learn there, Shalosh aratzot labihu, you split the land of Yisrael to three different reality of the fruits, the produce availability. So it means if you divide it to three different geographical type, therefore you cannot juxtapose one area to another. Again, let's elaborate for a moment. You have a certain field that produce certain type of fruits and vegetables. Nowadays, for example, take wine. Israel are very blessed with many different type of wine. But some expert said when it's come to taste of a wine, since the grape was raised in a different location, so you cannot compare the taste of a grape in the Galilee to the taste of a grape that come from, let's say, in a Benjamin area, for in Judah, in Hebron, in those places. The taste of the ground is those produce raised carry a different taste. So in our large understanding, if you take wine from Italy or wine that came from New Zealand or Chile or France, it's three different tastes. Why is that? The foundation is, first and foremost, the way that the grape was raised, right? So now, when it's come to the produce, and we discuss here the sabbatical here, we divided the land of Israel to three different locations. One is called Yehuda, the Judah area. The other one is called Ever Ayarden. It's a different opinion. What does that mean? Does that mean the east side of the Jordan, or the central part of the Eretz Israel between Judah and Galilee? That's the Rambam. But anyway, Vegalil and Galilee. So Shalosh Aratzot bekol achad v'achad. We consider that as three different states. So in that sense, imagine that it's like they don't have physically, but imagine that you put a walls, and you declare a different statehood in three different locations. Okay? Now, what happened? Velama amru shalosh aratzot labiur. So what they said that there are three different types when it's come to get rid of the produce. So they said, because the truth is they have 9 different locations there. So they said, Shiyu ochlin bekol achad v'achad ad shichle acharon sheba. What's the reality? The reality is that animals can travel and eat. But we hold that the animals eat in the location of their state. The animals not travel and eat from one state to another one. So they said, we, considering these 3 main locations, like you have imaginary borderline between the 3, and we consider each of them independent state for that understanding, and each state eat their produce until the last produce finished. So in other words, when it's come to sabbatical year, you cannot compare one state to another one. Now, how do you learn that? Amar Rav Chama Bar Ukva, Amar Rabbi Yossi Bar Chanina, Amar Kra. The Torah said, we just read it, you remember Leviticus 25:7, Velivhem techa, for your domesticated, velachaya, non-domesticated animal, asher ba'artzecha in your land. So the Torah said, you remember, Tieh kol dvoata lechol, it will be all produce to eat. So we here juxtapose domesticated animal to non-domesticated in the field to tell you kol zman shechaya ochrelet min hasadeh, as long as the animal eats a certain produce from the field, ha'achela be'ema shebabayit, you can feed also the animal eat you in your home, which means you can hold those produce elsewhere. Kala, the minute that it's over, is no longer available. Lachaya asher basadeh, kale lebemtecha asher basadeh. The minute that the animal in the field is no longer have accessibility, is no longer available for them, it's applied also to you, which means you have to get rid of whatever left over. Ugmirei, now it's very important, we have a tradition from our ancestors, which means that's called Kabbalah b'Masoret. Part of our belief in oral teaching is a tradition that handed over orally from one generation to the next. So, אין חיה ביהודה גדלה על פירות שבגליל ואין חיה שבגליל גדלה על פירות שביהודה, which means that the animals, as we said, do not travel from state to state, which means that the animal not travel to find produce from Galilee to Judah and vice versa, but it says that the animals of Judah go in all different locations within their state, but they don't travel out of the state. So what happened here? We are more lenient. We go by the leniency, go from one place to another. Tanu Rabbanan, פירות שיצאו מארץ ישראל לחוץ על הארץ. Now we talk about the sabbatical year, and you have this fellow. Let's call him a name. Let's call him Adam. And this Adam, he is traveling now with a produce that was created, was born in Eretz Israel, and he go outside of Eretz Israel. So the question is, now it's a time to get rid of the produce. What are you going to do now? מתבערים בכל מקום שהם. So the Tana Kama, the first opinion, said, what do you have to do? You have to get rid of them. Okay? Why? Because it's the time of the bi'ur, the expansion. But by the same token, if he's now outside of Eretz Israel, you don't require him to return to Eretz Israel in order to get rid of those produce. Because remember that it carries this certain sanctity, it's קדושת שביעית. רבי שמעון בן אלעזר אומר, יחזרו למקומם יתבערו משום שנאמר בארצך. Rabbi Shimon go by literal sense. He says, since we just quote the Torah in the book of Leviticus chapter 25, that they said, Asher be'artzecha, in your land, it means that it's not enough you have to get rid of that, but you have to travel back to Eretz Israel, and there you should do it. So the big question is, what exactly the application? So you have here a different opinion between Rashi and Tosfot. Rashi said that the minutes that it's you declare honorless, you take it out, you declare honorless, and therefore it's over. Tosfot said that basically you can declare an honorless. It's not only that you're leaving it for the animals, you declare honorless, but then you don't have to expunge it. So he said ha'apiktei. So the Torah said clearly in your land, which means you use it for different understanding. So it means that what Rabban Shimon Gamliel requires, you require a person to return to Israel and get rid of that. The Torah didn't use the word ba'aretz, in your land. They said in be'artzecha, which means that it's like the adding of the letter kaf at the end. So iname me'asher be'artzecha, not only in your land, but elsewhere, which means that it can go either way. So again, Rav Safra nafak me'eretz Yisrael lechutz la'aretz. So another story that emphasized the issue. Hava badei garba de chamra de shvi'it. He has a barrel of wine that basically came from the time of the sabbatical year. So Tosfot have a problem with that, how a person can carry outside of the Eretz Yisrael sabbatical year, etc. But the key point is that there are two stages when it's come to the mitzvah of getting rid of those produce. One, if it's no longer available in the city, so a person needs to get rid of that, or if it's no longer available in the entire land. So what happened here, Lavu ba'adei Ravuna Breder, Rav Ikra v'Rav Kahana. So you have two other sages with him. אמר לו, איקרא דשמיע למיני דרבי אבאו, הלכה כרבי שמעון בן אלעזר או לא? So what's the rules? Should I need to return to Eretz Israel to get rid of that, or not? Or I can do it here. אמר לרב כהנא, הכי אמר רבי אבאו, הלכה כרבי שמעון בן אלעזר. So the Chazon Ish said in Tractate Shvi'it 11, he said that the understanding here that yes, he has the obligation to do what? To take this barrel of wine from the sabbatical year and to do what? To return to Eretz Yisrael and then can get rid of that. אמר לי רבונה ברד רביקה, אחר אמר רבי אבאו הלכה כרבי שמעון בן אלעזר. We just said earlier that we don't follow that rule, require a person to return. אמר רב ספרא נקוט הכלל דרבונה בידך, which means you should follow this principle. דדייק וגמר שמטת מפומי דרבי קרא חוות דיבור פומבדיתא, which means that you always have to repeat what you learn several times in order to make sure that you clearly understand. So the Amar Chava Amar Rabbi Yehuda Har HaBayit, he said this is something that we study several times. You have a temple mount. Stav Gaful Haya, Stav Lifnim Mistav. He said it was a area of the Har HaBayit, the temple mount. So it was line by line by line in those walls around the Har HaBayit. So he said that when you have the temple mount was a double colonnade, it's called stav, as there is one and the other, so that it was the structure of the temple, that it was a row of columns. So what happened is he said that therefore you can go ahead, and since it was one within the other, so that's the reason why we go by the leniency that we follow the first Tana that said that we don't require a person to return with a sabbatical year of produce back to Eretz Yisrael in order to expunge them. So Rav Yosef said, Kare alei Rav Yosef, Ami be'itzo yish'alo maklo yagid lo. This is a statement from Hosea, chapter 4. Kol hamekel lo magid lo. So the people usually go by the leniency. If you hear someone said something that he's stringent and another one is lenient, people like to go by the leniencies. Rabbi Eli cuts kafniyata deshivit. Rabbi Eli cut a small date from the sabbatical year, which means that they are not really fully ripe. So basically what happened, the date lost their potential value because now they're not ready to rape it. It's cut them already. So the Gemarrah asks, Heicha avida achi, how Rabbi Eli did it? Le'ochlam arachmana v'lo la'afsed. The Torah said clearly that you should use it as a fruits to eat and not to lose. V'chitei mahane mileicha denachit lefira. That place that it's already ready to call a produce. אבל איכות דנוחת לפירה, לא. But in a case where it's not yet reached the status of fruit, no, it's not applied. So he said, ואמר רב נחמן אמר רב ברבוע, הני מתחילי דאור לעשירי. He said, those dates that not pass the year of Orla, which means the first time it's considering Orla date, so they are prohibited like all the other Orla fruit. The same has the same status. Why? So because it's like a guard of the fruits. So the same as the Orla, it's a certain time, which is the first 2 years, you're not allowed to eat the fruits. So he said, Veshomer lepirei eimat hava. So, and when do these coverings serve as protection for the fruits? So which stage, when you have these dates that grow on a tree, when it's considering quote unquote a protector, a guard for the fruit? So they said bechufrei. When is that? when the fruit is still young, but it's still yet it's called some type of fruit. So Rav Nachman hold that it's considering as a fruit. So how come we just said that Rabbi Eli cut those dates that basically are guard for the other fruits? He said bechufrei v'kakaro lo pirei. So it's because it's considering as a fruit. So it's not considering hefsed proch v'it. We have a concept that we treated the fruits of the sabbatical year in a certain sanctity. So if you just waste them, it's considering a violation because it's a potential to be a good one, and you. So how come he did it? Rav Nachman ke Rabbi Yossi detnan. We study in the tractate Ola, chapter 1. Rabbi Yossi omer smadar asur mipnei shu pirei. So he said smadar. By the way, that's a very common Israeli name. He said the grape bud, which means a cluster of grape in its earlier stage, immediately after the flower drop from the vine. So he said it's forbidden. Why? Because it's considering fruits even it's not ready, fully ripe. Upliga Rabbanan alei. The sages disagree with him. So the sages disagree with Rabbi Yossi, and they hold that it's okay. It's they say that the fruits, when it's the smallest, not fully ripe, it's not considering as a regular fruit. So according to the sages, this small fruit, it's not considering hefsed perot shvi'it. You're not considering you're losing those potential of fruits of the sabbatical year. So the fact that Rabbi Eli went and he cut that palm tree, and as a result many of those dates were lost, it's follow the sages, which is it's not fully ripe fruit. The Gemarrah rejected that and said matkifla Rav Shimi min Nahardea. Rav Shimi from the city of Narada disagree, and he said umi plige al Rabbanan led Rabbi Yossi b'shar ilanot. How do you know that beside the grape in that situation that is a smadar in the early stage, how do you know that the sages disagree with him for all the other different type of fruit? V'atnan, we learn a different tractate, in tractate Shvi'it, chapter 4. Me'matai en kotetzin et ha'elanot b'Shvi'it. When is the time that we don't cut the trees on during the sabbatical year, as thereby they damage the fruit? So, which means from what time this produce, considering a produce that you're not allowed to get rid of them in a sabbatical year. Beit Shammai omrim kol ha'ilanot misheyotziu. So they said all the trees from when the blossom fall and fruits begin emerge in its early stage. So that's the time Rashi said in Brachot 36, that's the time of the beginning of the fruits of the month of Nisan. But others like the Rosh and the others disagree. They say that you cannot go there. You have to say that it's not necessarily at that time. But anyway, ובית הלל אומרים, החרובים מי שישרשו והגפנים מי שיגריעו. They said that the carob tree may not be chopped down from the time that they are chain of carobs, and the vines from the time when the grape or kernel and grow slightly. והזיתים, 53, והזיתים משייניצו, and the olive from the time, olive tree from when they are blossomed. And he said, ושאר כלום משיוצאו, and the rest of the produce, when they produce a ready fruit. ואמר רב אסי, הוא בוסר, הוא גרוע, הוא פול הלבן. So Rav Asi said, anytime they say that it's unripe fruit, it's the same, it's all the same. It's the size of the unripe grape is equivalent to the size of all the others, white bean, etc. So the pol lavan sarka da'atach, what do you mean the white bean? So they said, elaimu shi'uro kepol alavan. It says that the equivalent, the size of the white bean. ומן שמעת לדאמר בוסר אין סמדר לו, who is the one who said it? רבנן, the sages. וקטני שור כלונות משרצו, לזר בדניסחי כץ. You have to say that Rabbi Eli, he chopped down the palm tree with a stunt date, which means that they never written on the tree. So therefore it's okay to chop down the tree because the date can be reaped only after they are removed from the tree. So that's therefore the way that they reconcile it. Now let's go to a practical halachot. First halacha is very important, is the idea of hamezalzel biyom tov sheni. We in the traditional Judaism observe the festival 2 days. Not only 2 days of Rosh Hashanah for sure, but also Pesach, Passover, Shavuot and Sukkot. We observe the 2 days, for example, Passover in the first and the last festival, Yom Tov. The same applies to Sukkot. So how about if a person who display contempt for the second day of the festival? So they said here, for sure they talk in the code, the time that the rabbi says the authority, the power, but they said one who displays contempt for the second day of the festival in the diaspora is punished with ostracism, which means that they put him under the nidui, because he's basically display contempt against the sages in the community tradition. If he's a Torah scholar, it's a Malkot, but basically that's Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim 496. We also talk about combination of 3 different produce in one jar. If we have 3 types of vegetable preserves in a barrel, so it's affected at each other. So this is the Kesef Mishnah on the Rambam, Ilchot Shmita V'Yovel, chapter 7. If one preserves 3 types of vegetables in one barrel during the Shemitah, the sabbatical year, he must remove each kind of vegetable from the barrel once it is no longer preserved in the field. If one begins removing that type, it's considered completely removed. That's the Rabban Gamliel. So and it's also in the Talmud Yerushalmi. We say that there is a concept called a Shalosh Aratzot, the 3 lands. Eretz Yisrael is divided into 3 lands with regard to removal of produce that grows during the sabbatical year. We go by the Galil, go by the Yehuda, and we go by the Transjordan. So as long as certain species remain in the field in a particular land, one may continue to eat throughout the land. And we say that animals not travel from one land or from one state to another. Another question have some practicality. Perot shvi'it sheyatzu me'eretz Yisrael, a fellow that carry a sabbatical year produce, and that produce that grows in Eretz Yisrael during the sabbatical year is taking the board. So it must remove whenever it's taken. The halacha is, in this case, is not in according to the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Lazar, and the Kesef Mishnah said that we have to go by the discussion of Talmud Yerushalmi. So therefore, we said that the person needs to get rid of that. Now, le'ochla v'lo le'efsed, one may chop down tree during the sabbatical year before they have begun to produce fruit. However, it's prohibited to chop them down after they have begun producing fruit. So that's very important because it's carry which called kedushat shvi'it. We said that they have an application to our days also in a sense of the grape juice. It's just an example. You have sometimes a produce that come from Eretz Yisrael, and you have to look at the bottle, because if it's the sabbatical year, for example, if you get a grape juice and the sign on the bottle that it came from the sabbatical year, you have to carry it with certain sanctity. For example, you're not allowed to spill what left over. It's carry kedusha, it's carry sanctity. Or if it's a fruits and you rip the cover of the fruits, you're not allowed to trash them. Usually the minhag is to wrap them with 2 bags, because again it's carry which called a kedushat shvi'it, the sanctity of the sabbatical year.